Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of Next Level Play Therapy, where we talk about all things play therapy. And today I thought, you know what? Let's talk about our mistakes. Like we've all made them. I've made them. To be honest, sometimes I still make them. And if you have ever left a session thinking to yourself, I don't know if I made a difference. I don't know if that worked. Am I even helping? I must be the worst play therapist on the planet. I should probably refer my client to somebody who knows what they're doing. If you've ever felt that way, then you are in the right place because we have all felt that way. I've felt that way. And it's usually coming down to one of the 5 things that I wanna talk about today. A lot of times it's more than one, and if you're experiencing any of those feelings that I mentioned, then you definitely wanna stay tuned for today and check it out. So, a lot of these are things that I find I've made these mistakes, and then now as I talk to more and more play therapists, especially when I'm talking to play therapists who schedule a video call to find out if Play Therapy Academy is a good fit for them. A lot of these are the things that we talk about, and we also talk about these a lot in Play Therapy Academy. So, Play Therapy Academy is my online consultation program. It's more like a VIP experience, is the way that I explain it, where we have consultation calls, there are courses in the program, and then we have a group chat. So, lots and lots of support and lots and lots and lots of conversations. And these are the things that I find come up a lot. So I thought, you know what, this would probably make a really helpful episode for the live stream, or those of you watching the replay, or those of you listening to the podcast episode. So, if you're interested, I am going to talk a little bit about Play Therapy Academy at the end. So, if you've been looking for a community of support with a lot of hands on support, especially for me and the group, it's a small group, then you're definitely going to want to stay and listen to the end because I will talk about that if that's something you're finding you really are missing to take your play therapy skills to the next level. So let's get started for today. And I want to talk about, so today's topic is how to overcome mistakes using play therapy. And we've all done these. And probably we do them more when we're just getting started in the play therapy field. But some of these, even almost 25 years now, using play therapy specifically, once I've figured out how to get the training, I still find myself having to remind myself of these mistakes when I start feeling a little lost. So, the first mistake that I want to focus on today is this one comes up a lot. Like we have a lot of conversations with these in Play Therapy Academy. And so, what I'm about to say, I just want to do a little disclaimer. We're play therapists. We love learning about play therapy activities. When I provide play therapy trainings, I typically, unless it's a short training, but if it's at least a day-long training, and even the shorter ones, I try to get these in there, play therapy activities, because we love play therapy activities. So the first mistake is over focusing on getting just the right play therapy activity, or you're focusing on what play therapy activities to use and not focusing on your theoretical framework. Like we've all done it. We've all gone to the trainings. I go to the trainings. I have the books. I have all the books by Liana Lowenstein. I have books from my colleague friends in Australia, Fiona Zant and Suzanne Barrett. They've got some awesome books as well. Early on, I collected tons of books by Paris Goodyear Brown when she was putting out lots of books about activities. Like if there was a book, I was probably going to buy it for when I was doing directive play therapy. If you're strictly a child-centered play therapist, then this mistake is probably one that you still struggle with. And what I mean by that, especially if you're just new learning child-centered play therapy, there's a tendency to feel like you're not doing it right, or you're missing the mark, or it's not working. So then there's a tendency to think, oh, I just need to integrate a play therapy activity. Child-centered play therapy isn't working with my 6-year-old client. So parents are asking me what's going on, or I feel like I'm getting pressured from the school staff. So I should probably use a directive activity. And that's not necessarily the case. What typically is the problem is you're not focusing on the model, your play therapy model. So for child-centered play therapy, you're kind of feeling pressured and like you need to demonstrate that you know what you're doing. And so the go-to is getting an activity. I've been there. I have done that myself. What happens though, and this is a lot of conversations we have in Play Therapy Academy, is when we really start looking at if somebody is using child-centered play therapy and that's their model that they want to learn, then when we go in there and we look at what's going on, child-centered play therapy is working just fine. When we're looking at the themes and we're looking at the sessions and seeing how those are going. All the other models, Adlerian play therapy, Gestalt play therapy, psychodynamic play therapy, all of the other ones, prescriptive play therapy, integrated play therapy models, those lean sometimes between child-led and therapist-led, depending on a variety of things going on. The thing that you want to do is you want to make sure you're focused on your play therapy model. How does your play therapy model explain what's going on in the sessions? What stage of play therapy are you in based on your theoretical model? It's going to explain what you're doing in that stage of play therapy, which then leads back to what are you going to, if you're doing a directive activity, then you're focusing on what type of activity fits for this client in this stage of play therapy. So the focus is more on your theoretical model and what's going on. And then based on your model, you can figure out what play therapy activities to put in there. And I find this is probably the number one reason play therapists feel lost, or they leave a session feeling like, oh, it didn't work. Play therapy is not working. I'm doing a terrible job. I must not be a good play therapist. Maybe I should refer. That's usually the number one reason why you might be feeling that way. And so, to be honest, that's probably a big thing that we focus on in Play Therapy Academy, is figuring out what's going on. How does your model explain it? And then how do you get back on track using play therapy? The second mistake that I see happening a lot is waiting too long to involve parents or caregivers, or not involving them because there's a belief that if you involve them, then you're violating your client's confidentiality, or you're not sure what to say to parents. Usually, what happens if you wait too long to involve parents in the play therapy session, it's because you also don't really have a good grounding. And again, it kind of goes back to your model as well. What does your model say? What does your play therapy model say about the role of parents? What does your play therapy model say about how are you integrating parents in the play therapy process? So child-centered play therapy is still going to integrate parents in the play therapy process. They're just not integrating them in the session with the child. They're going to do parent consultation sessions. So child-centered play therapy, you're still involving parents, and your play therapy model influences how you're going to do that. But let's say Adlerian play therapy will explain the role of parents in the change process and how you're going to integrate them in there. So you can have family play therapy sessions and have parents in the sessions with the child using that model. So waiting too long to involve parents is usually what usually happens is, one, you're not thinking about using that clinical decision making based on what does your play therapy model say. The other thing is, and this is going to lead to number 3 that I'm going to go over as well, but I'll kind of mention it here, which is you haven't started out with parents and gathering that information to formulate your case conceptualization from the very beginning. But the other thing that happens a lot is because, one, you haven't kind of thought about the role of parents, then the other part of that is you haven't really established your expectations. Like, what exactly is going to look like? I remember I did this. We all do this. This is one thing we talk a lot about in Play Therapy Academy as well. And if you've listened to any of my previous live stream episodes, or you've been listening to the podcast episodes, then you probably would have heard me say this probably 9 million times, which is the 5-minute check-ins at the end of the session are, one, they're never 5 minutes, and two, they're not enough time to build that rapport with parents. I remember like not wanting to overwhelm parents, and I wanted to be supportive of them. And so I did the 5-minute check-ins at the end. It was front of the child, always made me feel uncomfortable. But the way that I was trained in, there was like early on, we didn't really think about these things, to be honest, not from my experience anyway. And so somewhere along the line, I found myself getting really frustrated, feeling like, why am I having a hard time getting parents to schedule appointments? Or mostly they don't want to schedule appointments. And then I was getting the phone calls in between sessions, and I had all those phone calls that I was responding to, or I would get emails and they would send me this big long email about what's going on. This is way before we had texting. Texting is much bigger now, so I imagine there would be big long texts before I changed things. And what I realized was I was getting burned out, and then I was getting frustrated. So when I took a step back, I thought, you know what? I haven't gotten clear on my expectations. I always use the analogy of, for any of those of you that are married, or you're living with your partner and you've lived with your partner for, at least a year or more. you realize, you go into the relationship and you're like, oh, this is awesome. This is great. We're going to have a great relationship. Everything is going to be awesome. You've had, you feel like you know what you want, had some of those conversations here and there. And then you start living with each other. And then you're like, wait a minute, this is really irritating me. My husband and I are going to celebrate 33 years of marriage on Friday. We've been together 35. So it's a really long time. But, every marriage, every relationship where you're living together, there's some point in time where you're like, wait, this is irritating me. And then you take a step back and you realize, these are expectations that I've had that I didn't know I had. I just thought everybody had these. I thought everybody understood how this works. And now I'm getting irritated. So then we have conversations and hopefully that goes well, right? Well, it's the same for mental health. Parents don't know. They don't know what the expectations are. You're the expert in their eyes. And then if you're not clear on your expectations, then you haven't communicated them to parents from that very first phone call about what the expectations are. And so identifying those expectations and communicating those expectations and what is that going to look like is an important part of the process. And so what happened for me, there were way too many times that I was having a hard time getting parents to schedule appointments. And there was always, and sometimes there were really good reasons. And at the same time, you're the expert. And so you know what needs to happen to facilitate the change process. You have to have those conversations. First, you have to have that conversation with yourself. What are your expectations? Because waiting too long to schedule with parents or trying not to overwhelm them and not put one more thing on their plate, then what typically happens, not always, but what typically happens then is you get all these phone calls in between sessions and the emails and the texts, everything's going wrong, play therapy is not working, then you feel more pressure, then you're not sure what to do, then get frustrated, start getting a little burned out. If any of that sounds familiar, raise your virtual hand, put a raised hand emoji in the comments. If that has been you. The fix is to, one, figure out your expectations and then communicate those. The third mistake that I find play therapists making is, to me, this is another big one. And I talk about this a lot, and I talk about it a lot because it is a big one. And this is a lot that we talk about when I do case consultations, especially when we're doing consultation in Play Therapy Academy. But I also have my other membership program, which I had to change the name. So now it's called Play Therapy Elevation Circle. That one's going to launch again, but it's closed right now. But we talk about that with case consultation and Elevation Circle as well. In Play Therapy Academy, we meet twice a month. So we're regularly having these conversations and going through the case conceptualization process. So what ends up happening is, because you have this amazing big heart that wants to help and you want to make a difference in the lives of children. And again, I made this mistake too. You get right to the play therapy session and you kind of skip the information gathering. You maybe do the play therapy session and you're kind of getting information through the play therapy session, and maybe you didn't, which is good, and maybe you didn't take that initial session with making sure the caregivers are there at least. When kids are really little, I tell caregivers, parents, just come alone, because if they're really little, that gathering all of that information is not going to be so helpful in front of them, depending on the age of the child also. Um, it's skipping that initial session where you're asking all the questions, you're doing the psychosocial assessment, you're asking all the questions, frequency, intensity, and duration of the symptoms, getting some history, getting developmental history, all the things, because all that information, you're going to take that and use that to formulate your case conceptualization from the very beginning. And then it's an ongoing assessment process throughout the change process in play therapy. And getting that initial information gives you a good starting point. So, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by case conceptualization? That is where you're gathering enough information, all the information, to figure out what's causing the problem. Like, what are the roots of the problem, and what are the patterns in the child's life that are sustaining those? That's going to give you a good starting point, a good start for your working hypothesis about what you're probably dealing with. It's also going to help you get a diagnosis. So, diagnosis is not a bad word. We can be friends with diagnoses. Diagnosis isn't everything. It's not the end all be all. And diagnoses, the way that I look at it, it gives us a good starting point for understanding a cluster of symptoms and why are they happening. Your theoretical model is going to go deeper into helping you explain why the symptoms are happening, and then what are you going to do about it. So, like, my fundamental theoretical model is attachment theory and neuroscience. So I look at everything through that lens, even child-centered play therapy. So just kind of adds an extra layer in the child-centered play therapy approach, because child-centered play therapy is heavily relational. So it's a good fit. And then when I do more of an integrative model, then I still use attachment and neuroscience as my theory model. So then it helps me make sense of the behaviors. And then it's going to help me figure out what I'm going to do using a play therapy model, which for mine is, if I'm doing directive or child, I'm usually using more of a integrative model. And then I'm looking at what needs to happen and what needs to change, and I'm assessing that over time throughout each stage of play therapy. So it helps with your clinical decision making. It helps with your decision making from session to session to session. What are you going to do? Who's going to be involved? What is that going to look like? And are they making any progress? So they kind of go hand in hand. Your theoretical model and your case conceptualization go hand to hand. But what happens is, if you don't take the time to do that, you don't take the time to gather all of the information, then you kind of are starting out a little bit blind, so to speak, in many ways. And then you start, at some point, you're going to feel lost, like you don't know what's going on. You're not sure what's happening. Then you're going to start second guessing yourself. And then you're going to start doubting yourself. And then you're going to start thinking, maybe I'm not a good play therapist. So if any of this sounds familiar, know that you're not alone. To be honest, I still think about these things sometimes. I still kind of struggle. And then what I do then is I take a step back. If I find myself getting frustrated, or I find myself getting a little lost and thinking, oh my gosh, is this working or not? I'll take a step back and I'll go through my case conceptualization. What is at the root of the problem? Why is it happening? What is my model? What is my play therapy model? What do my theoretical lens say about that? And then it kind of helps you get back on track. Mistake number 4 is really the last two have more to do with self-care. These are ones I think we always, even now, I have to do this. And I think this is an ongoing thing. I think no matter if you're a new play therapist or you're a seasoned play therapist or you're somewhere in between, this is one thing that we continually have to come back to over and over. And that is checking in with our own nervous system. Like, how are we doing? Especially, I remember when I did a ton of sessions. I do more consulting and overseeing at this point, but I do have I do see clients here in caseload. Mostly, I do a lot of consultation. And even now, I mean, I remember being when I had a full caseload day after day, kind of taking time in between sessions, check in with my nervous system. So the mistake number 4 is not tending to your own nervous system. And the fix for that is to make sure that you are. Do your self-care in between sessions. I'll be honest, sometimes I use the cleanup process as a way to kind of reboot my system, kind of give myself a chance to take some breaths, slow down, clear my mind, and get ready for the next session or the next thing that I have to do. And the third one, the fifth one, I feel like this one is probably inherent in the helping profession because we do want to make a difference. We want to help people. And then the problem is we feel like we have to be perfect. Like we have to be the perfect play therapist. We have to do everything right. It's solely our responsibility to get everything right. Everything falls on us. If that is you, if you can relate, again, raise your virtual hand, right? Put a raised hand emoji in the comments. Those of you listening on the podcast, like I see you. I see you raising your hand. If you're listening to the podcast on YouTube, you can still leave a comment. I learned that this week. I'm still trying to figure out all the back end things of all this technology stuff. Anyway, so yes, raise your hand for sure, right, on Instagram. Hey there, Instagram. Yes, virtual hands for right. I'll be honest, I still struggle with this one sometimes. I'm much better at it now because I'm like 35 years, almost 35 years in mental health now. So I'm much better at it, and I still catch myself doing this because I do want to make a difference, right? And we feel like everything is our responsibility. Here's the reality. It's not. Everything is not our responsibility. One, this is a good reason why you want to make sure to involve parents because they're going to make a deeper impact if you can help parents become the therapeutic agents of change for their children. Sometimes it's rare, but on occasion, it just doesn't work. And so you have to kind of shift gears with that and figure out another way. Typically, parents with support. Parenting is hard, man. Parents need support. They get a ton of noise on the internet these days, and all the noise tells them they're doing a terrible job. So parents need our support. And that's one way to kind of help not be fully responsible for everything is when you're partnering with parents and bringing them alongside and helping them be a facilitator of change. But everything is not your fault. If it fails, it's not always your fault. And let's say you make a mistake because you're going to. It's not a matter of if you're going to make a mistake. Spoiler alert, you are going to make mistakes. That You're going to have a bad day. You're going to be tired. You're not going to be feeling well. You're going to be frustrated some days. Some days you're like learning new things and you're not going to know because you're learning. And the only way to progress and get better at your skills is to learn. There's just no way around it. That's why really good consultation support is helpful. So in Play Therapy Academy, we try to give a lot of support during that learning process. But give yourself a little bit of grace. You don't have to be perfect. You aren't. I mean, you're not perfect. Nobody is. So here's what you do. This to me is where, so this is where, so case conceptualization is important. Using your theory model is important, combined with therapeutic rapport. Therapeutic rapport is the anchor to the process. You don't have to be perfect. Sometimes all you need to do is to be present, fully attuned and present in the moment, and help clients feel seen, heard, and understood. Doing that authentically, focusing on some congruence. So if like when, not if, when you find yourself kind of drifting off, or like sometimes I still find myself getting a little irritated, and I'll check in with my nervous system. I'm like, what is going on? Why am I getting irritated? Or why am I getting frustrated? Then I'll kind of check in. I'm like, okay, I'm not in congruence. I'm not congruent with unconditional positive regard and empathy. I will figure that out later. Because I know something got activated that's going to give me some good clinical information. So I tell myself, you know what, I'm going to figure that out later. Right now, I'm just going to be fully present in the moment, congruent with unconditional positive regard and empathy. And then if I can figure out in the moment what's going on, then I can do some clinical decision making about what am I going to do with that. But I have to first be from a place of authenticity with unconditional positive regard and empathy. That doesn't mean we don't set limits. We set limits. We can do that. But my point here is you don't have to be perfect. Sometimes the most healing thing we can do is to be present. Sometimes that's it. We're good. Clients are good. And then we'll figure it out as we go. Sometimes we just let go and we trust the process. We trust that if we lean into relationship, if we lean into our model, then we will get there and we will figure it out. We can always do repair work anytime, those times where we've made mistakes. If we need to do that, we can. That repair work can be really powerful with your clients, especially kids, man. Grown-ups don't often, maybe they do now more now, but I know I always did with my kids. That was really, really important, but it wasn't really the prevailing parenting wisdom at the time. I think it probably is more now, but think about that with the kid. Owning our mistakes, apologizing, and doing that repair work goes a long way with kids when they know it's authentic and they see that you genuinely are going to make the change and you genuinely care about them as people, right? So those are the 5 mistakes that I regularly see going on with play therapists, including myself, ones I've had to work on as well. So let me do a quick recap. One is you're over focusing on activities and you're not really focused on what your play therapy model says. So even if you're using an integrated play therapy model, it's grounded on theoretical framework. Like I use an integrated version of child-centered play therapy in there when I'm doing more directive, because child-centered play therapy is amazing for relationship and being fully present in the moment. Also, neuroscience and attachment theory. How am I looking at this through this lens? And there was a trauma model that I learned a long time ago. She's probably 15 years ago. So I kind of integrate that one in there because it has a neuroscience model to it, but it's a trauma model, but I kind of use it a lot to kind of anchor my play therapy work when I'm using more directive type of work when they're a little older. It's still grounded in a theory model. There are still stages of the change process. So you want to make sure that you have a framework that's grounded in theory that you're working out of, and then you can plug in activities from there. The second mistake that I regularly see play therapists making is waiting too long to involve parents in the play therapy process because you don't want to overwhelm them. They have a lot going on, or maybe you feel intimidated, or you're not sure how to integrate parents, which then goes back to your play therapy model. What happens is you first have to get clear on what your expectations are. What are your expectations, and how does that align with your play therapy model? And then how are you communicating that to parents about what that's going to look like? And how are you communicating to them what is their role in the play therapy process? The third mistake is skipping the whole case conceptualization process, not using that very first session to have parents part of the process, gather all the information, get the specifics about the symptoms, frequency, intensity, and duration. When does it happen? When does it not happen? How do you deal with it? Family history, developmental history, all of those things. The reason you want to gather that initially is so you can begin your initial case conceptualization, also known as your working hypothesis. Like, how are you making sense of what's going on? Like, what are the roots of this problem and what's activating it? What are the patterns that are activating it? What are the patterns for the child? What are the relational interaction patterns within the family, at school, different areas where the child is integrated into the community, right? We're looking at all of those patterns. Then you use that to formulate your working hypothesis and assess and adjust throughout the change process. Whenever you get lost, and you will, then you just go back to your case conceptualization and what your play therapy model says to help you get back on track. The fourth and fifth mistakes are really more about our own self-care. And so number 4 is that we're not tending to our own nervous system. Like, we need to check in with ourselves, clear your thoughts, clear out all the whatever's going on in there in your own nervous system, clear that in between sessions, and attending to, like, what can you actually, I call it theoretically hold. Like, not theoretically, what can you therapeutically hold in a day? Like, how many actual sessions can you actually have and not feel burned out by the end of the day? So you have to figure out what that number is, because you are therapeutically holding a lot of people every day from session to session to session. So part of that is checking in, and how are you going to manage that? And what do you need? What is the self-care that you need to be able to do that? So for me, I do that in between sessions, kind of clear the air, but also taking time, like connecting with my family, my kids, my husband, getting out in nature. Nature, it like soothes my soul. Hiking soothes my soul. I have got to get into nature. or to like feed my soul. And spending time with my kids and my family, and um, that to me is really, really important. And my friends, I have a real small circle of friends, and spending time with them is really important as well. So number five is thinking you have to be perfect, and you don't. It's not possible. If you find yourselves like getting stressed out or feeling overwhelmed, to check in with yourself. Like, are you feeling responsible? Are you feeling like you're responsible for everything? That everything is your fault if it works or doesn't work? Like, you have to come up with the perfect this or the perfect that, and you have to do everything perfectly and say everything perfectly. You don't. It's not possible. We're human beings. My husband actually said this to me once. He is not in the mental health field. He's more always been in law enforcement field. So those are two systems that kind of have to work together, helping, right? Helping, mission focused, coming at things a different way. But my husband said to me one time, because I was like, oh, having a bad day and feeling like I did things wrong and wishing I had done things differently. And this is a while back, man. He said to me, well, you're a human being. It's not like you're going to do everything perfectly. I mean, you're human. Of course that's going to happen. When he said it, it was like electricity, like, oh, he's got such a good point there. So I kind of remind myself ever since then, like, oh, wait a minute, am I expecting myself to be perfect? No, I have to be the therapeutic version of me in with my clients. And what does that look like? How do I do repair work? That can be really powerful. The times when I've missed the mark, but I don't always miss the mark. Sometimes it's not me. Sometimes I'm taking responsibility for things that are not mine to take responsibility for. And so make sure you check in with yourself. Who's responsible? Who owns the problem? Who's responsible for fixing the problem? Your role is to be the guide. You're the wise guide who says, oh, go this way or that way. And then when they don't do that, and what you said was going to happen happens, then you compassionately, with empathy, kind of go through and work through that process with them. But they're ultimately responsible for making the changes. We cannot make those changes. So that is it for today. So those of you who are interested in Play Therapy Academy, I have currently one spot currently open, and I probably have a couple of spots opening up soon. So if you're interested, Play Therapy Academy is my online play therapy program where we meet twice a month. We do case consultation. You have not only my almost 35 years of wisdom, you have the wisdom of the group. And if you ask anybody in Play Therapy Academy, what is their favorite part? And I would say the same thing. It's the community. It's the group. It's hearing everybody's ideas and insights and suggestions and resources, feeling seen, heard, and understood, and then coming up with some strategies and helping to basically take their play therapy skills to the next level. Really, a lot of growth, I think, happens in Play Therapy Academy because it is pretty hands-on. And then there's courses to give you some foundational skills while you're learning to apply them during the consultation calls. And then we also have a group chat feature to get lots of support in between our consultation calls. And then there are some bonuses with that as well. If you've been looking for a space to help you take your play therapy skills to the next level, and maybe you want to work on your registered play therapy credential, then Play Therapy Academy could possibly be what you've been looking for. Not everybody in Play Therapy Academy is pursuing their registered play therapy credential. Sometimes people have their credential. They just wanted to fill in and get more support and fill in the gaps where they felt like they had gaps in their learning. So if you're interested, then hop over to my website at rhplaytherapytraining.com. I revamped the consultation page a little bit. So it used to be the supervision page. Now it's the consultation page. So pop over to my website at rhplaytherapytraining.com and then click on the consultation page. You'll find more information about Play Therapy Academy on there. Schedule a free 30-minute video call. I like to do the video calls to make sure it's a good fit. So you can ask all of your questions. We can talk about where you're struggling and how Play Therapy Academy can help you overcome that or take your skills to the next level. So schedule the free video call and hop over to my website, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.